I can't see absolutely everybody at the same time, but maybe that would get my attention. And if you're feeling like you're not being noticed, the last resort is to unmute and say, hello. I am doing my best to monitor everything and also to just keep track of time. So appreciate that in advance. Again, with the chat, you're welcome to drop some ideas, comments, etc. in the chat. We absolutely pay attention to that. If we can't get to your comment today, it is part of the record. And if there's a question that needs responding to, we'll make sure that that gets answered. I think it's just, I want to encourage us all to be mindful that we are a big group and we do want to hear from everybody as much as possible. So keep your comments, concise. And if somebody's already said what you'd like to, you can just type agree in the agree with so-and-so in the chat. Just some techniques for making things run a little bit more smoothly. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say at the outset. We have a full agenda, and it's our commitment to get us through the agenda in the time allotted. And anything that you feel we didn't cover adequately, you can also give us that feedback as well. We'll have some time for that. But it's a very exciting and great opportunity for us all to be in conversation together about trails. So I'll back away for just a moment and let Devin Reef, the Park District's project manager, have a few words, and I'll be back in a little while to review the agenda. So go ahead, Devin.
Great. Thank you, Lou. Greetings, everyone. For those of you who I haven't met yet, I'm Devin Reef. I'm a principal planner with the Park District, and I speak for the whole staff team when I say we are excited for today's meeting and for your generous participation. This includes Lou, who you've just met, Maria, who are our facilitators, and Brian Holt, Sean Dugan, and Amanda Sanders from the Park District, as well as other Park District staff. So much has changed in our country since the last time we met in August, and we know that focusing suggestions on the future of the Park District trails can be challenging to your attention. And we've heard from some participants that feel that this meeting time of 3 hours is, especially on Zoom, too long. So we recognize we're a big district and there's a lot of material to discuss. So you are welcome to turn your camera off anytime you're not speaking. We know that some of you are also at work right now, so you'll have to come in and out of the meeting. That's all fine. There are some breaks in the agenda, and in the future, we'll try to keep meetings to about 2 hours. And one reminder that we are recording this, and we'll post this on our website for the public to see. And as Lou mentioned, please raise your hand in the Zoom participant screen, and we will call on you. So first, we have a short poll to get a sense of where everyone is this morning. So let me turn it over to Amanda.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start this poll, and just one moment.
Same effort was Breakout Rooms, and we got about
Devin, I saw a message from Amanda, something about you need to log off for the poll. You're muted.
Sorry. We're both logged in on the same account. I'll need you to log off, Devin.
What's happening?
It'll be just one moment. Sorry for the mix-up. Lou, could you go ahead and continue with the agenda while I try to figure out this technical issue in the background?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Let me just review the agenda real quickly, and maybe Amanda can get that taken care of while we're doing that. So I believe that you all have got this information in advance, but I just wanted to make sure that we're all tracking what we're doing this morning. There are a couple of new members that we wanted to welcome into the group. So you'll be hearing those introductions shortly. And then I should say that we've tried to establish kind of a template for these meetings. So we think it's really great to start with any announcements from the Park District that might be of interest to the working group. You know, we have the benefit of having some senior staff joining us. So if there's anything that they can share would be great. We also want to spend just a little bit of time, not in a lot of detail, just in reflecting on what occurred the last time. So we have a couple of months in between our meetings. So an opportunity to just remind ourselves of what occurred at the last meeting and just any updates to the shared resources that we've established. The district has now a page devoted to this working group with a bunch of different resources on it. So that's something that we will just call your attention to. This morning, the meeting got extended a little bit in part because we wanted to reflect and make sure that we are feeling solid about the working group's purpose and charge and the ground rules that we have. We feel like we've got an excellent group composition right now. There's some questions about how are we going to make decisions or reach consensus. We wanted to talk about that with you for a little bit. What are we striving towards in developing a product that will come out of this group? And lastly, how many meetings are we going to have? So we'll cover all of those issues, hopefully in a half an hour. I know there's a lot of folks with a lot of opinions, but we do need to nail this down today. At 11 o'clock, we're going to start again. This template envisions that each meeting will be devoted to the perspective of one type of trail user, one or perhaps more. Today, we're going to focus on hikers and get their perspectives and discuss those perspectives amongst the whole group. So the Park District is going to start off with a little bit of background on hiking and how they frame hiking from the district standpoint. We're also going to hear from a couple of hikers, who are just here to start the conversation. They don't speak for all hikers, perhaps, but they're just here to prompt the conversation. I forgot to mention there was a district survey that went out that we'd like to share some of those results with you. And then also, because we're such a large group, we thought every meeting would be great to break into smaller discussion groups so that we can have more robust and more intimate conversations, and then have everybody come back together and hear what some of the comments and ideas were. Today, again, a special item is just the survey results from the working group. And then lastly, a standard agenda item, what are the next steps we have to look forward to? And then we'll close today by 1. So that's a brief overview. Did I give Amanda and Devin time to resolve?
I think thanks, Lou. I think we're going to skip the poll for now.
Okay.
People are probably polled out anyway. And let's take this opportunity to hear from some of our newest members. I've got about 7 people who are new to the group, and I want to give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. So I will call you.
Devin, you're breaking up on my end.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's better.
I'm going to call on people individually who are new members, and please let us know who you are, what we represent, and what you're hoping to get from the work to come. So first, let's hear from Elena Miramar. Elena, welcome.
Hi, Elena, I think you're muted. If you could just introduce yourself and who you're with, that would be great.
There you go. You're unmuted. But we can't hear you.
Unmuted, but not getting any sound. So this is the reality of the Zoom world here.
Oh,
So Devin, maybe if you could just share who Elena is with, and we could see if maybe if she, I don't know if you can log off and log back in, or sometimes the phone audio is good.
yeah. So Elena is the publisher of Vision Hispana newspaper and website, and she is a multi-decade hiker and participant in East Bay Park trails. And Elena is also a member of the Park District's Multicultural Advisory Group. She can join us. Okay, so Elena, hopefully we'll hear from you. Next, we have our new youth members from Civic Corps. Let's start with Gabriela Martinez and then Antoine Chambers. Welcome.
Hi, it's actually Gabriela Mosco Martinez. I'm really happy to be here. And what I'm trying to get out of this is knowledge of what the park is trying to represent. And I really hope that it wants to represent the diverse community and the minorities too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Antoine Chambers. I'm interested in learning the overall work of the trail youth, like the hikers, bikers, just learning how to make it better, represent on diversity.
The youth specifically too. And that's it. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Civic Corps is, for people who don't know, an amazing both charter school and California Conservation Corps jobs work provider for the Park District and many other open space agencies. So we're really happy to have you joining us. Okay, next, Ian Baird. Ian Baird, welcome.
Hi, Ian. You're muted, so we can't hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for including us in your group. I'm with the Orinda Hiking Club. I happen to be the president. We have over 350 members who hike with us. We have about 9 hikes a month in the Bay Area. We have domestic hikes to other states, and we have overseas international hikes where you have to have a passport to go hiking. We hike in the East Bay Regional Park District parks quite frequently. We tend to avoid trails in other parts of the Bay Area where bikes are allowed. So we are very much against having bikes on narrow trails. We see bikes on fire roads, and that's acceptable to us. But we enjoy hiking on the trails of the East Bay Regional Park District parks and sharing these trails with equestrians. So that's it. Any questions?
Great, Ian. Thank you.
Good.
We're really glad that you're here and you're bringing your perspective of all your members.
Okay. And just as a matter of interest, we do donate money to the East Bay Regional Park District. We donate money to about 7 different organizations in the Bay Area or in the country that build and maintain trails. So we give money to the Ivan Dixon, is that right? The Ivan Dixon Department of the East Bay Regional Park District?
Yes, yeah, that's our volunteer trail organization. We're
Yes.
grateful for the contribution.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Next is Kathleen Ross. Kathleen, I'm not sure if you have joined us or not. Maybe Kathleen is not with us. Kathleen is, I don't see Kathleen. Okay, well, maybe Kathleen can join us later. Next was the Michael Gregory, who didn't have a chance to join us last time. Michael, are you with us now?
Yeah, I'm here. Michael Gregory. I serve with Bob Ricard, former member Bob Coomber, and others. I'm sorry I don't recognize you on the district's PAC. So longtime East Bay, Oakland, Castro Valley, Anthony Chabot user of the park every which way. And you bet, yeah, when I see this effort get realized and redefined and more equitable for everybody. And thanks for letting me join. Bye-bye. Oh, by the way, I was up at the creek, what the creek fire wiped out. Part of that is where I was back in August. So it's all smoke now. See you later.
Thank you for that perspective. We're really glad to have you. And then finally, Bob Coomber. Bob, welcome.
Well, good morning. I'm so used to Zoom meetings here, and I wanted to preface this with saying I've got to bail at about 10:30 because I'm still a Livermore City Councilman for a couple of more meetings, and I've got a briefing to get to this morning. So I appreciate being here. I think it's something that's real important, and it's about time we pick it all up. For those who don't know me, I have been called America's #1 wheelchair hiker by Tom Steenstra of the Chronicle, as well as summiting a 14,000-foot peak or two in my time in my wheelchair. I have fun and don't put a lot of constraints on myself. So I'm looking forward to this group and getting real active and seeing what we can accomplish. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna, when time comes, I'm just gonna back away and leave. So.
Okay, well, we're really glad to have you, Bob. Thank you. So next up is Brian. Brian has some announcements from the Park District on the work that we've been doing in the last couple months.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks for bearing with us as we sort of struggle through what we hoped would be over with by now, but doesn't look like it's going to be going away anytime soon. So, so I don't want to say that this is the new reality, but it might be with us for a little while. So we're doing the best we can with what we got, and we appreciate everybody's patience. So just real quick, just thank you everybody for who's here. Thank you everybody who is joining us for the first time. My name is Brian Holt. I'm the Chief of Planning, Trails, and GIS here at the Park District. Many of you know me. I've been at the Park District for 15 years now, have worked on a variety of projects and have engaged in many conversations around trails at the Park District. So I'm glad that this group is together and that we're able to engage in this conversation, this dialogue. I know we've gotten a number of questions as staff is sort of, what's the purpose of this group? Why are we here? And we need to have a good charge. And I think from originally we kind of laid out, well, the purpose of this group is to make the Park District's natural surface trail network better. And what that means is, really different for everybody. We've heard earlier that there's some folks who don't think that there should be mountain bikes on any narrow trails. We know from others that they think that cyclists should be able to use some narrow trails, and there's a range of perspectives. I think from us as staff, we're coming at it from a perspective, and I'm going to share my screen here real quick. First, we've been just really busy during this whole COVID period. We've been dealing with wildfires and everything else as we're working from home. But what we're also seeing is a pretty significant increase in park usage. It's been said, and you probably heard, parks are essential. Parks are essential services, and we certainly feel that. We think they've been, pretty critical during this whole COVID period, and a lot of people, I think, agree with us. And as bowling alleys, movie theaters, and just about everything else has been closed, parks have really provided the one respite for the community and for the East Bay to get out. So what we're seeing is at least a 29% average daily increase in the use of our parks. And this is data that was taken from cell phone data that's collected from various companies that we were able to access and sort of see just what the increase in usage in our parks is. And this is across the district, but certainly there's some parks that increase is probably much greater. Parks like Tilden and other areas. So this is for Alameda County. You can see our green line where sort of there's an initial drop as people were actually sheltering in place. And then throughout the summer, just a really significant increase. Similar in Alameda County or in Contra Costa County, where we're seeing a 22% increase across the park. And I just want to emphasize that that 20% increase in park use hasn't come with a 22% increase in park rangers or park staff or park funding. So we're doing more with the same or more with less, I would say. And so that's a challenge. And of course, with 22% increase in park use, you're going to see a corresponding increase in user conflict. That's just natural. And certainly we have heard an increase in that. But part of our challenge in the planning department and staff is that, and this is a good problem to have, that we've been really successful, particularly since 2008. With the passage of Measure WW, the Park District has been successful in acquiring a lot of new parkland. And the area in orange is what you can see as what we refer to as land banked property. This is property that is not yet open to the public. It's a significant amount of land. It's something that we're constantly working on developing land use plans, resource management plans, and other plans to make them safe, secure, protect resources, and then provide a trail or road network that's suitable, that's protective of the resources and meets the recreational users' needs out here. So that is part of why this group is together, because we do know there's lots of opinions on how those and I'm going to meet you, how those parklands should be planned for. I think we have folks who feel that there should be that our roads, all of these areas come with existing ranch roads, and that those should just be suitable and we can open them up. I think as we work with various U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and California Department of Fish and Wildlife, we're also very cognizant that lots of times those existing ranch roads that we have on these properties lead us directly to where we don't want the public to go. These ranch roads were built to go to stock ponds, and that's where you have your species, your breeding species, and your endangered species at. So we're constantly looking at how can we best site trails to avoid these sensitive resources and still provide the sort of facility that our users will actually enjoy and use, and not go out and build their own facilities, frankly. What I like to say is the most protective and the best protection for the natural resources in our parks is a well-designed and well-managed trail system. So that's why we're here, is how can we best get there? We need to work through some of these conversations. Frankly, just saying that mountain bikes aren't going to be allowed on trails is probably not a great starting place. But just saying that we need to open up all narrow trails to mountain bikes is also not a great starting place. So we need to find something in between, and we need to figure out other strategies that could potentially work as well. We know it's been done elsewhere, and we want to be able to do that here in the East Bay Regional Park District. So that's why we brought you all here together, to hear these various perspectives and to figure out the best way that we can work through that, and that we can continue to improve our trail network. So thank you all for being here, and look forward to the dialogue.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, Lou, I'm going to turn it over to you for the remainder of the agenda.
Okay, great. So the next on the agenda, we wanted to just reflect on the last meeting. I realize a few of you are new and weren't at the last meeting. So just listen in, and there are a couple of things that are helping us along the way to document our process. And one of them is Amanda is here officially as the district's, secretary, if you will. She's taking good notes, but we also are recording each of these working group meetings. And so there's a record of the conversation that we're having together. There is a set of notes that was prepared, and I don't know if everybody received a copy. I'm going to just share my screen again and just show you. So these are not minutes, and we're not taking a vote to approve or not approve, but we definitely want there to be some record of the conversation that of the discussion and the flow of the work that's been done by the working group. Let me just show you. This is the set of notes that was developed from August, and if you remember, we went through a series of agenda items to spend a good time just introducing ourselves, as we did this morning with the new folks. And talked about our formation ideas. What is the mission of the group, the ground rules, the composition, and then we had just a really free-flowing dialogue about what the aspirations are for folks to do to be on this working group, and we set our next meeting. We did obviously get a lot of input between meetings, and we're keeping track of that. Another thing that happened since we last worked together was the development and posting of a web page for our group. And again, if you haven't visited that, I wonder if we can get the URL posted into the chat for everybody. Hang on just one second. Okay. Yes, I see your comment, Amelia. So here is the web page that's devoted to the Trail User Working Group. And what I wanted to point out to you is just how this has been organized to document the schedule and past meetings, any documents that we have developed here in this. And then, as you can see, the page is divided up into types of interest groups and resources that each of those groups wants to share for the benefit of the group and the public, whoever is listening or interested in the work that we're doing together. So this will continue to be a repository of information and ways that we can all plug into key information that relates to the work that we're doing. And I want to thank everybody who's contributed so far to this. I hope you're finding it useful. And before we move on, I'll just stop and see if anybody has any questions or comments about these resources that we are using as shared documents for us to use. So, including positive comments. Yes, hi, Norman. Do you have a comment?
I don't recall receiving the notes. Where are they, or how can I get them?
Right.
I just sent something. I don't know whether that's the notes or a response to Mary Barnsdale.
Yeah. Devin's indicated that they were intended to be posted on the website. So you do have the recordings, I believe, or the mural, at least from the mural being that whiteboard that we're using, by the way. But you're right. The notes should be coming out to you as soon as they're prepared and in pretty good shape. So if you didn't receive that, Devin's offering to send those during the meeting right now. Otherwise, looks like they will be put on the webpage by Monday. Okay. Ian, quickly, and then Amelia, I see your hand. Ian, I'm trying to unmute you because we can't hear you yet.
Can you hear me now?
Can, yes.
Is the objective of this group to develop a policy that is put in the form of a motion that's given to the board of directors to say yay or nay? Right.
Great question. And we're going to be talking about that work product. What are we working towards? But it is not a policy. I think we have established that it's not a policy per se. So we'll talk about that in just a moment, Ian, about the work product and the mission of this group in the next section of the agenda. So,
well, a question, Lou, is it something that the board of directors will be voting on?
They will be, I don't know, I'll turn it to the district. I don't want to represent.
So, Ian, no, not necessarily. This is, we will be taking all of the input that's in here, and this group may come to a. It would be great if this group came to a consensus and a recommendation that we could then discuss with our Park Advisory Committee and our board. Lacking that, we will be bringing forward just a summary of everything that we've heard. Perhaps there is some guidance that's given there, and then we'll be discussing with our board as well. So the path that this group could take is pretty open, and there is a potential role for our Park Advisory Committee as well. So we'll see where it goes, but there's not a specific policy that we're asking this group to develop. We certainly are not looking to have a trail design review board or something along those lines. But really, there's a variety of potential issues that we could discuss around the district's Ordinance 38, the district's land use planning process, the district's, any number of different things that we're looking for, some guidance on how we can best provide some clarity on working through that process. So this is more looking to come to an agreement on how we make decisions and not developing a new policy or plan for the district.
Okay, Amelia, you had your hand up next, and then I'd like us to move into the next part.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great.
Good morning.
Briefly, I'm wondering, what are the criteria for documents being posted on the group website?
Good question. Can we just put anything? I don't know, Devin, do you have a response for that?
Yeah, thank you, Amelia, for that. We have generally posted things that, in fact, we've posted pretty much everything that people have sent us. The goal of the resources is that this is something people are sharing. So we didn't want to post like personal communication, but Amelia, your survey that you did, your survey report, that'll be posted Monday to the group. So in that case, you can explain to the group what that was. Basically want this to sort of be a reference library, and each of you represent, many dozens, if not hundreds of other trail users. And so if you self-organize like Amelia did with the equestrians to do Facebook surveys and you want to post those results to us, please send those to us. That's valuable data for us to have. Or in the case of the Sierra Club, so a year or two ago, they put together a white paper of their thoughts. So we encourage all groups to sort of send sort of the most pressing and most informative information to us, and we'll post those.
Okay. Thanks, Devin. Okay, so again, we want to make sure that the notes from each meeting get routed to the working group members as quickly as possible after the meeting. And definitely in the packet that goes out before the next meeting, we'll send them again, just as a reminder of where we are in the process. And as Devin just described, we'll also have an opportunity to update the resource page. Okay, Bonnie, I see you're raising your hand, and let's make this our last comment for this section, unless it's very, very urgent, because we have a lot to cover today. So Bonnie.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that when documents do get posted, that they are compliant with WCAG rules, the Web Access Content Guidelines, so that it's usable to everyone.
Thanks. Yes, good reminder. And I assume, Devin, that's everything's in compliance, but let's make sure that occurs for sure. Okay. Let's move on to the next part of our agenda. This is about the working group formation, and we just wanted to revisit a couple of items here that, I think Ian also, and for the benefit of those who weren't at our last meeting, we should dive back into these items. And I'm sharing my screen again. And just as a reminder, folks, this is our mural. This is the platform, the whiteboard that my colleague Maria Mayer is taking notes on. And so we have sections in here for each of the agenda components, and Maria's doing her best to keep up with the chat and also the spoken comments. So here we are in this part of the agenda, the update on the working group formation. And so we wanted to just review with you. We made a little tweak to the mission and purpose of this group. And I'll just read it. And if you have some urgent thoughts about this, you know, we'll take it. I just want to say that hopefully today everybody's going to accept where we are with our working group formation, you know, guidance. You know, it is definitely important to understand what we're trying to accomplish together, how we define, you know, decisions or consensus, and what we're working towards. I know that validates your participation, and we do take that really seriously. So let's just see if we can get through these items and have everybody at least feeling comfortable enough to proceed. The mission that we started with was the working group will work directly with Park District staff to evaluate various trail interests, constraints, and conflicts that influence the planning, design, and implementation of new natural surface trails. As well, and then we added, based on input from last time, as well as how we can best improve park trails without compromising the safety or enjoyment of any diverse group of trail users. Okay, so that's a slightly modified version. Where did my chat go? There it is. Okay, so we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Simone, I see your comment. We'll get there in just a second. So that's our mission. Again, you know, look at the different trail interests, constraints, and conflicts, and how can we best improve park trails without compromising safety or enjoyment. So that's our purpose of meeting together. And I think combined with, you know, what we're tasked with, creating, I think Brian just gave a little overview of what the expectation is from the district staff and the board about our work. So let's take a look at that. We got Simone's edits to the ground rules, which I'll go over in just a second. And then Amelia had asked, you know, let's get this mission statement sent out in writing. So for sure that will be front and center on the notes from today. You'll get a chance to see that. And it will also be posted on the working group webpage. We obviously want everybody to know what this working group is doing and what its mission is. Okay, so in the ground rules, these seem to be pretty well accepted last time. And the suggested addition is to be respectful of diverse opinions and exercise civility. So I think that's, if that wasn't, I think we had keep an open mind and be respectful as a general ground rule, but we can add the notion about diverse opinions and civility perhaps there. I thought there was general agreement that these were a workable set of ground rules. So unless you have some specific difficulties, and Gary, I see your comment there. I'll ask Maria to provide that link to the board, the whiteboard for you. Okay. So those are the ground rules and the mission. The next thing we wanted to review with you was consensus. So there was some discussion, and again, this goes back to the type of work product that we're really working towards. And as Brian explained, we're not looking for this group to promulgate a specific policy per se. So I think what we will be doing, and I think if Brian wants to, you know, jump in and clarify this further, I think what we are trying to do is to document and establish what are the issues that each of the user groups experiences out on the trails now. What are the concerns? What are the issues? What are the aspirations of each of the groups? What is everybody out there trying to experience? What are their goals? And what are some of those issues? And then thirdly, as we have our discussions, and today we will be focusing on hiking, as I mentioned, or hikers, what are some potential solutions that this group would like to consider, or would like the district to consider, to either remove some of those barriers or issues that hikers experience, or help them achieve whatever their aspirations and objectives are out on the trails. So it's sort of those three components, I think: aspirations, issues, and and potential solutions. So the consensus statement that we're talking about here is about encouraging dialogue, which I think these meetings are intended to do that. We definitely want to use this as an opportunity to clarify agreement and disagreement. We want to improve the information that's used in the process. And I think partly that resource directory or that resource element of the web page is a step towards that. We're looking at trying to address head on some of the controversial issues using face-to-face interaction among the stakeholders. That's what we're trying to achieve here as well. And I think important to note is consensus doesn't mean that everybody agrees completely on every part of what we're talking about. Hopefully everybody does feel like their voice has been heard. And it also means that everybody can support the decision or the work product that we create, even though you might wish some part of it could be slightly different. So simply put, consensus is the willingness to go along with the decision or the recommendations, either in active support of it or in not opposing it. So that's the definition of consensus we think could be workable for a working group such as this. And if you have any comments or thoughts about this, we certainly can take that. Just getting my screen set up. So is that, I also would love to hear if folks are feeling like that represents a workable definition for our purposes here. And Simone, thank you. Simone says, yes, I agree. Okay. And Mary, thank you. Kathy, good. Thank you, Bonnie. Gary, all right. Sounds good, sounds good, sounds good. All right. Devil is in the details, right? All right, that's on all of us to make sure that this happens. Thanks, Amelia. Yep. Okay, great. All right, well, I'm going to proceed, and because I'm really interested and excited to get to the content of what we have to talk about today. So we have a couple of other items wanted to mention to you. The group composition, by the way, you met some of our new folks. We added some youth, and Ian came over to us as well. And I think Elena, I don't know if we have resolved her issues, but we really feel like we have a really comprehensive representation, or at least a representation from all of the different interest groups. And if not directly on the working group, those networks that fan out from all of you folks, I'm trusting that this will be a well understood and well documented and robust kind of conversation. So that's
Lou?
Yes.
I did see that Kathy Roth joined us, so maybe we could just have her say hi real quick and just who she represents, what her interests are, since we gave everybody else that opportunity.
Fine, that's great. Kathy, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Oh yes, hi. Thank you for letting me join this group. I'm really interested in the group. I would say I'm here to represent dog walkers, specifically dog hiking on trails. And I have a real general interest in all the trails, and especially in the new acquisitions. Would like to see what the planning for the new acquisitions is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Good. Very glad you're here, and welcome. All right. The last two items on this agenda piece is around the work product and the number of meetings. And so let's review again. I tried to describe what at least I think is a reasonable expectation, and not just reasonable, I think really useful to the district would be a set of issues and potential solutions for optimizing trail use for all user groups. And while I recognize that many of you have been active in speaking with the district over many years to try and communicate about some of your concerns and hopes and potential solutions, this is an opportunity for not just us to speak individually to the district, but as a group. And I think one thing that will speak highly from this process will be an appreciation of, because we're a mixed group, if you will, different perspectives. If we can demonstrate that there's been some appreciation and understanding and dialogue between potentially, conflicting groups and some solutions discussed and hammered out, and that I think would speak really well for this process and the usefulness of the group. So with that said, I'm open to some suggestions about how to make this this work product meaningful to you. We've said it's not exactly a policy that we're creating that the board would vote on, but perhaps it is a set of recommendations or a presentation of a summary of this group with the those issues and solutions mentioned that I think there was a committee that Brian, you mentioned, that would be taking this up and would take it on up to the board eventually. Okay, so I'll stop talking and let you, have some feedback on this. Pam, did you want to speak on this?
Hi, yeah, Pam Young from Golden Gate. I think this is an opportunity for all of us to address what we all share as assumptions. One proposed assumption is that we all want to avoid and minimize impacts to habitat and wildlife. Another assumption is possibly that every trail represents some degraded habitat, whether we're hiking, walking, riding, or whether it's a dog on leash, a dog off leash. Those are the kinds of assumptions that will help us build consensus going forward. And we could create a list and then build from those assumptions. We could even have, as you said, breakout groups around those assumptions, and then come back as a whole and see if we can agree on those assumptions and build on those going forward.
Great. I think that would be a really, again, a very valuable piece of the results from this group. Yeah. Other comments?
I see Mimi with her hand up.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm really kind of checking the participant list and the chat as my. So Brian, thank you. Mimi, go ahead.
You're muted, Mimi.
Yeah, we can't quite hear you yet.
Still muted, Mimi.
I'm trying to unmute you. Thanks, Rick.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
Always in the middle. Well, my concern is with the mission statement that you put up, because I see that is thought about the environmental concerns, but it isn't stated. Could you put that statement up again, please?
It's right here, yes.
The last line, as well as how we can best improve park trails without compromising the safety of enjoyment of any diverse group. It says nothing about the environmental concerns. So is there a way to put something in there without compromising the environmental? I can't think of the word I want. Environmental quality.
Maybe I would suggest maybe we add in something in there without compromising the safety or enjoyment of any diverse group of trail users, balanced with the district's mission to protect natural resources.
Okay, if you want to put that many words, that's fine. But I think that is as important as the use of the people who use the trails.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think that's, Pam, maybe where you were also talking about, let's ensure that we are balancing use, because any use is going to have an impact on environmental qualities out there. So just acknowledging that.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. And Jim Hansen, you were next.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Lou, and hi, everybody. So Jim Hansen, California Plant Society. So thank you. And I think the work product piece is very important. Kind of got to the why we're here. I think one of them we could really I think, be beneficial to the district and really use the talents and incredible experience of everybody here. The board workshop last October, we all kind of know there's wide trails and hiking, equestrian, narrow, and so on and so forth. And that's been there for, I don't know, decades. But I think the new thing that we all have to kind of consider creatively is there was a proposal, and Brian, you mentioned it, and I think it's a very good thing to talk about. And somebody else, I'm sorry, Kathy mentioned that, this new trail or new park development, and what do we do about trails there? So there was a whole new direction introduced around creating narrow trails that would be multiple use. It would have walkers, equestrians, mountain bikes, if you had a dog and everything. I would really like to delve into that because I think that touches on a lot of our interests. It kind of focuses into something that is really real and present. So I just would like to see something very specific like that. Thank you.
So I just want to jump on that real quick, and thanks for that, Jim, because I think that does kind of get to what the catalyst for this group was, and that is the Sibley Land Use Plan and trails that were included in there. So, part of our goal when we're doing trail planning is to, site trails in a way that minimize resource impacts. But also recognizing that in that area, some new trails were necessary to avoid or to allow for restoration of what was, a really steep road that was not user-friendly from a recreation perspective. So, new trails were included in there that were I would say, of variable width. Utilizing an existing roadbed as it went up the hill. And then the trail necessarily got narrow in a certain place because of resource concerns. There was bunch grass in the area. And that was in an area that staff felt like could accommodate multi-use. Sight lines were clear. It was a place that we felt that, bikers and hikers would be able to see each other clearly, and a place that would be needed. But that caused a lot of concern amongst many. And so, ultimately the use recommendation was removed there. And that was the impetus for this group was, okay, let's try to get everybody together and we can look at that trail and see what the sight lines and would people be comfortable with the design to have that narrow section be multi-use, and really understanding what the thinking was behind that. So Jim, just what you said is, like I say, was part of the impetus for this group. I mean, there's other trails in the Southern Los Trompas plan that we're working on, very similar, in the Clayton Ranch or Black Diamond Mines plan, where we're having to balance that with the preserve management plan with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And, all of our goals is to, minimize the impact, but also recognizing that, some of these new facilities are needed to actually provide those connections. And how can you do that in a way that, could possibly accommodate multi-use? And is there a way, either through sightlines or maybe there's, other facilities, or maybe there's other strategies like having, some days where bikes are permitted and some days they aren't, or certain directional trails. There's a lot of options that could be discussed.
Good. Just a couple of more comments that have come in. Sorry, from Simone. I think, Simone, you're suggesting that you want to make sure that this work product is actually useful or helpful to the district in designing new trails, and also helps make that process more smooth and avoids potential legal action. And I think, the district would probably agree that's a good goal to have, and to make sure that this work product is reflective of the amount of time that's being spent on it, that really has some meaning, and that we feel like it's being really productive and useful to the district and to the users for sure. Okay. The last piece on this is about the number of meetings. So I think in order to get us to those places and to really allow for each user perspective to have some time to present and to have all of us discuss that perspective and think about it and identify where conflicts are between groups or among them, and what potential solutions are. We thought we would do this framework that we're presenting today of getting our housekeeping taken care of, but really focusing the bulk of the time on sharing those perspectives and unpacking some of that. So initially we had discussed having a quarterly or every 3 months having a session, and I think there was some feeling last time that felt like it was a little long in between meetings. And so, oops, excuse me, moving stuff around. So we think we can perhaps shorten the interval a little bit. Each meeting will be a little bit shorter as well. And as we said, try to focus on one perspective, or perhaps, if we have time, maybe more than one. And so this is the preliminary layout of meetings going forward. So today we're meeting and we're sharing about the hiking perspective. And this hasn't been verified as far as topics, but just kind of to lay it out as an example. So in a couple months, we would come back. I think the holidays and getting the new year started might be really challenging for those of us who are trying to support this process to do so. We're suggesting that maybe February would be our next meeting, again, focusing on one type of user group. A couple of months later, we would focus on the next user group, and meeting number 5, a couple of months later, on another user perspective, and then wrapping all of things up at our 6th meeting, late summer, or maybe again, if we're hopefully vacationing by then, we could move it to September. But I think the goal for the district was to spend about a year with this group and see what we can come up with. So that last meeting would be kind of a consolidation of all of the issues and potential solutions that we've come up with, and devote that last meeting to our final discussions and hopefully some consensus around what we want to move forward as the result of this working group. So let me get a couple of comments here, and then we want to move into the meat of our discussion. Thank you, Michael. Yes, dog walkers. Yes, dogs and dog aficionados for sure. And Amelia, I'm going to let the district talk to this. Amelia was under the impression that it was going to be a 2-year process. So I don't know if Devin or Brian, you wanted to address that.
What I've said is, as long as this remains useful and productive, then it can go on as long as it needs to. If it devolves into just the same old arguments and all that sort of stuff, and then who knows? But if as long as there continues to be value and you all find value in it and it's instructive to the park district, we could keep it going. So
great. Okay. Other comments or thoughts?
I see Austin's got his hand.
Yeah, Austin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've posted a number of comments in the chat box that have not been recognized or stated, and I feel like we're plowing through these items pretty quickly. There's quite a bit that we could talk about on the mission statement, ground rules, before we just jump into the number of meetings. So just like to recognize and hope people are following the chat, because the facilitation is not following along directly with all the comments there.
Yeah. Apologize. I meant to get back to your comment about the work product, Austin, and specifically, and as Brian has been doing, I think representing kind of his impression from staff about how this goes. So, and Maria's dropped those comments directly into the recording as well. So, yeah, Austin's suggesting that the work product include a couple of things: recommendations for designing new trails on land bank properties, ideas for creative management of existing trail network. So creative management concepts, managing e-bikes on natural surface trails. So, again, recognizing those special considerations for bikes that are electrified. And lastly, a better understanding of what opportunities there are for increased volunteer trail stewardship work. And I think I'll let Brian respond to that. I think there's room for all of that to occur in our conversation. So hopefully we can include all of that. So
yeah, and if I could just lastly, I mean, I think it's really important on the ground rules that groups here focus on their interests and not positions. And I have to say that in the introductions on some of the new members, to come out the gate to just basically put your foot down about certain user groups is not collaborative in its approach. And I'd really ask everyone here to sort of get away from these positional statements and let's learn from one another on what your interests are so we can actually work together to develop solutions that will address the growing use of these parks.
Yeah, really well said. Agree that is the intent, that we listen. I think that was one of the ground rules, that we are listening, and I'm seeing some support for that point of view as well. And Pam is offering that we should focus on environmental impacts, habit protection, et cetera. So I think that's also really good. So great. All right. Well, again, the number of meetings was really just a kind of a concept to throw out there. And I think we're getting some interest from all of you that you'd be willing to participate in more than just these 6, including the idea that maybe one meeting is not sufficient to summarize everything that we've been doing and to get a good feeling from the group about what to put forward. So we'll take that into consideration as well. And as Brian said, open to, things continuing as long as the group feels it's productive and that they're making some progress. And I think one of the ways that we demonstrate progress, as Austin challenged us, is to offer, areas where we are listening to one another and indicating, some willingness to work together. And I'm seeing a few ideas about supporting that notion of the work product being a little bit more inclusive and more explicit in what it's trying to accomplish. Great. All right. So anybody else? It's proving a little bit difficult for me to see the participant hands up. So I appreciate folks letting me know. We would like to move into the focused area for today, but if anybody has any burning desires here. Okay, let's move forward then on our agenda. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. So today we are going to start our sort of perspectives idea with the hiking perspective. And our thought was, let's hear from the district about how hiking needs and user perspectives are typically addressed. And then we're going to have a little bit of a presentation from the district survey, and a couple of hikers are going to offer some preliminary remarks. And then we're going to do this breakout group process that we think will be useful in having a little smaller group discussions around this. So Devin or Brian, I'm not sure which of you is doing the framing for the hiker's perspective.
Good morning, everyone. This is Sean Dugan here. I Trails Development Program Manager with the East Bay Regional Park District. And I don't know if Devin, you had something to add. I'm in the middle of sending a presentation to you.
Yeah, Sean, I'm opening it up now. Give me a second, I'll share my screen. Hold on just a minute.
And I'll say that it's really not an overview of the hiker's perspective, but what I'm going to provide the group today is my hope that I'm providing you an overall perspective of the pressures and the challenges that the district faces around this issue. Trying to get ready here. Can you all see that screen there?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
What?
Thank you, Devin, for sharing that. Okay. Subtitles. No, I don't want that. Okay. Are we ready?
Yeah. Can you see the slides? What
I can.
is the?
You have to start the show.
All right.
There we go.
There you go. Okay.
So Devin, you've got to switch over to presenter mode. So if you drop down on display settings, I think you can go, we're seeing your notes right now.
Sorry, folks. We'll get this going.
Technical challenges abound today. It's 2020 still. I blame the year.
All right. How's that?
This is great. I'll start too.
There you
Oh,
go.
perfect. Perfect. Okay. Again, like I said, I'm going to try to frame the challenges to managing and developing trails in California in less than 15 minutes. So here we go. While all members of this group do have strong opinions on this matter, the Park District doesn't have the luxury of taking sides on this. This group has been formed to have a very real and pointed discussions amongst yourselves about trail use and development, and to highlight different trail user perspectives in the effort to find a balance to trail use demands district-wide. As was mentioned earlier, after this summary, we will begin to hear various users' perspectives, starting with the hiker's perspective today, and then we'll move through other user groups' perspectives in future meetings. This summary that I'm about to give is meant to provide a context to the natural and human pressures put upon the Park District and the challenges that we face in meeting these demands. The hope is that having this context will help this group find some common ground and start to meet in the middle on some of these issues. Next slide, please. So the Park District currently manages just over 125,000 acres of open space land. Of that land, we really only own and fee about 104,000. Roughly 30% of that land, or approximately 37,500 acres, is in land bank status, as Brian mentioned earlier, which means that it is not open to the public yet. The goal is to open that land to the public whose tax dollars were used to purchase it. Traditionally, the district has completed land use plans for individual properties in order to propose certain uses, facilities, protection areas, conservation areas, and trails within that park, and cover the future development of those park elements under the California Environmental Quality Act. Next, okay, this is good right here. So the only way the public can legally access and experience these properties is by way of designated trails or roads. In 2019, there were 2.8 million people living within the Park District, and that number continues to grow. And development is putting pressure on the edges of our parks and moving closer and closer to open space lands, thus increasing the pressure to open these lands to the public, and solidifying the fact that you're not going to be alone in the Park District's parks or trails, and that you're going to have to share with everybody else. Next slide, please. So the current distribution of trail types within the district is shown in this pie chart here. You see that there's paved trails, unpaved trails, and then there's unpaved ranch roads or fire roads that we designated. As you can see, the majority of the trails in the Park District in purple are roads, and they existed when we purchased the property. If you just focus on the unpaved trail mileage of 200 miles there, this is the part of the pie that everybody talks about. This is the part of the pie that we all want a piece of, that we all enjoy. And you can see from the survey results that we just received back from 25 of you, that 75% of you prefer these types of trails over roads. And that's pretty standard for what I've heard over my last 15 years at the Park District. We're not arguing over the purple part here. We're talking and focusing on in-park trails that are unpaved in this green wedge. Can you please go to the next slide, Devin? Within that green wedge, this is a distribution of the uses allowed. All of those trails in the green wedge are open to hikers. And this is pretty standard for the state parks as well, that hikers are allowed on every trail. Out of the 200 miles, 57% or 114 miles are open to horses. We do not have any horse-only trails. We only have hiker-only trails, and we have horse hiker-only trails. We don't have horse-only trails. And then 50 miles or 25% of that green wedge is open to bicycles. And again, we don't have any bike-only trails either. All of the trails that bikes are on that are allowed on in this green wedge are multi-use trails. So they're shared with everyone. Next slide, please. Most roads or pathways that existed on lands prior to the purchase by the Park District were not created for recreational use. This is important to note. Within Park District lands, there are approximately 1,210 existing miles of roads or trails designated for use by the public, and that's excluding the paved trails. The Park District has only purposely designed and developed just over 13 miles of new trails since 1995. When comparing these miles of roads and trails in the district versus intentionally built, sustainably designed recreational trails, that 13 miles, since 1995, you can conclude that most of the trails and roads within the Park District were not designed or intended for recreational uses at all. Next slide, please. So what we call these are legacy trails. The current Park District trail system consists of mostly ranch roads intended for grazing practices and access to water sources for cattle, trails created by game or deer and cattle who are traveling to those water sources or shade sources, or trails historically created by people exploring those cattle paths, making them into trails or creating their own overland trails to get to the very same areas that animals would want to go to, such as shade and water and leafy green vegetation and riparian areas, et cetera. The Park District would like to develop sustainable trails within a sustainable trail system within the land bank lands and open those lands and then attempt to apply those successful strategies of directing people where we want them to go so they don't create their own and further damage resources. And then apply those strategies to our existing trail system where applicable. Next slide, please. So before I go on, what is a sustainable trail? How do we define that? So we've adapted this a little bit, but we follow the California State Parks definition of sustainable trails, and it's 3 pieces. A sustainable trail avoids or minimizes impact to natural and cultural resources. This is the key point here, that we will try to avoid first, and if we can't avoid due to topography, where we know people are going to want to go, then we'll minimize through design and through routing and through mitigation if we have to. A sustainable trail withstands the impacts of the natural elements with only routine maintenance. Right now, our survey shows that you all think our trails are, the majority of you think our trails are very well maintained, which is great to hear. We do hear the other side of that a lot. Sometimes we only get the bad news. But if a trail is designed correctly to sheet water and to sort of maintain a stasis in the environment for a long period of time, then we don't have to continually go out and fix it. And that's the idea behind the design. And then number 3, sustainable trail meets the needs of the users that want to use it, so they stay on the established alignment. Sort of the if you build it, they will come model. If it's a great trail already and it goes to where people, we've estimated where people want to go, then they'll stay on it and they'll use it. And then we've successfully kept them out of other areas that we may not have wanted them to go. So there is currently a trail supply and demand problem at the district. Most of you said that you are satisfied with our trail system, which is good to hear again. But there are more and more people using our trails now as a COVID, but this was evident before COVID. And in a lot of cases, you have new people coming into the parks with new equipment. Maybe they just bought it because they want to get out of their house. They've never even been to the trail. They've never ridden a bike. And they're coming in droves to our parks. So in some cases, there's not an understanding of etiquette or rules. So why hasn't the park district developed more trails within the park district? Well, I can tell you right now, it's not because we don't know how, and it's not because we need help designing them, or that we haven't tried, or that we don't want to. Can you go to the next slide, please? The biggest challenging to building new trails is the permitting process and the presence of threatened or endangered species that restrict development of these trails. Trails are treated with a similar intensity of review through the permitting process as a subdivision might, except subdivisions are actually get approved and built because they're not proposed within lands that have historically been managed as open space. So here we are conserving all this land, but regardless of that, putting a trail through that land borders on impossible due to some of these factors. One is the presence of the endangered species such as California tiger salamander, red-legged frog, the Alameda whipsnake, or the Alameda striped racer, and other special status species of plants and animal, and the habitat that our lands support for them. Many of the lands purchased by the district are in topographically challenging areas, such as hillsides that have been historically protected from development by the park district to preserve the scenery that we all love and enjoy in the park in the Bay Area. But designing and constructing a sustainable trail with an appropriate grade or slope through these types of lands severely limits route options that can be established and almost always requires crossing jurisdictional waterways, habitats, or other things that are being protected as well. Last but not least, there are sensitive cultural sites and geologic sites as well on these lands that need to be preserved. And I'm probably leaving something out, but you get the picture, I hope. Please, next slide. While more and more people move to the Bay Area, the trail mileage available to them has stayed mostly the same. There have been many attempts to construct new trails or convert allowable use on existing trails to allow more uses to help alleviate use pressures. But for better or worse, the Park District has the benefit of hearing from everyone on every side of any issue about their group's opinions and attempts to find a balance of these demands. The most recent cases of proposed new trails within the land use plans, within proposed land use plans, has led to threatened lawsuits and pitchforks and torches, for lack of a better term. The most recent, given the trail supply and demand issues we face, the amount of banked land we need to open, and the challenge to developing new trails, the district has attempted to find balance by designing trails that allow all users, where possible, with full knowledge that multi-use trails compromise the enjoyment of everyone in order to serve the greater good. We don't feel this is the answer we want to stick with. We don't feel like this is the best approach, but we're forced, when we can't build very much, we have to do something for everyone. We face challenges on all sides of this issue. So what can we do about it? How can we move forward? Many trails require an overabundance of maintenance due to the lack of thought that went into their design. Many trails lead to areas where resource agencies and opponents of new trail construction would like to exclude people and dogs, but are clearly where people instinctually want to go. By trying to continually keep people out of these areas while also dealing with the damage caused by the public accessing these areas, Park District staff spends valuable time and money that they could spend on other important Park District functions. So my point here is that if we just designed it right the first time, then we wouldn't have to go keep closing and restoring trails that people are making on their own. Next slide, please. We're constantly playing catch up with park users who take it upon themselves to build their own trails. And here's a couple of examples. With no regard to the impacts they have on the land or sustainable trail design. While we all sit around the table and disagree about whether new trails should be built at all, where they should be built, and what users should be allowed on them, or what usage should be allowed on them, there are miles of new trail being built as we speak, because our current trail system does not meet the recreational demands that are being placed on it. I should qualify that all user groups are guilty of creating what we would call social or bootleg trails. This practice is expected to continue if we continue to miss the mark in meeting the demands of all trail users. Next slide, please. So why are we choosing to focus on land bank properties at the moment? With lands in land bank status, we have the opportunity to design a sustainable trail system that begins to meet users' needs and doesn't take away from existing use patterns or overly give any users precedence over others. It's a chance to take a comprehensive look at these properties from the perspective of anticipated user demand and minimization of natural and cultural resource impacts, and to also accommodate the needs of the district to manage these properties. The Park District recognizes that trail construction and use has an impact on the environment they are constructed in. We recognize this. The Park District is still going to continue to propose construction of new trails within the Park District lands, while striving to also protect natural resources as best as can be done. These are both parts of our mission. The Park District recognizes that people use trails for different reasons, whether it be for stress relief, exercise, skill development, hobby, or spiritual and mental rejuvenation. The Park District recognizes that different users have different needs, and that not all of those needs can be met on every trail. The Park District recognizes that it's not going to convince different users that they are wrong or less important than other users in seeking their recreational trail pursuits. The Park District recognizes that a creative approach to providing multiple uses and managing those uses on its lands is needed now to address the increased demand on its lands while doing its best to preserve the safety, natural resource and conservation values, and historic values of that land. So why are we here now? We are here to bring these issues up and get it on the table. We ask that you drop any distrust of other trail users and that you just listen sometimes. We ask that you understand that the Park District is trying to balance out the needs of many different user groups, not just yours. We ask that you consider dropping labels and stereotypes associated with various user groups and that you view each other as community members who all want to enjoy and value our park public lands and trails just like you do. If you are here to advocate and fight for your position and hold your ground, this group will not be productive, and we're going to continue to have this conversation for the next 30 years as we have been for the last 30 years. District staff does not want to manipulate this conversation and let our biases impact any conversations, debates, or proposed solutions. We're going to do our best to just hear all of you. It's not a new conversation for us. We are very well aware of the perspective arguments that we're going to hear, but we feel like you all need to hear them. It's time for this group to talk amongst yourselves, learn from each other's perspectives, find some common ground and think outside of the box on how you and others can get what they want. I'd like to suggest some possibilities to think about as we move forward in the development and management of new existing trails, and then I'll conclude. Some management strategies that we've seen other park districts do and that we'd like to throw out there is a designation of park units within parks, certain uses in certain areas. An inclusive process, coming up with an inclusive process for how we move forward with development of new trails and adoption of plans. Educational strategies to increase understanding of trail use, resource protection, and etiquette. Improvements to signage. Trail permit issuance for all or some use of trails for particular activities at particular times. Trail design features that minimize trail user conflict. And management strategies such as permit issuance, as I mentioned before, at particular times, establishment of one-way trails, staggered days of use on certain trails, and the designation of single-use trails. So I hope this helps in framing the issue. I know I tried to get it in 15 minutes, I probably failed, but I hope that you see kind of the world that we live in here as a park district. We're trying to manage the land and we're trying to listen to you. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and perspectives as we move through this process. And of course, I don't know if we have time for questions, but let's take it from there. Thanks.
I was just about to unmute myself and then the screen changed. Okay, thank you so much, Sean. I saw a lot of people applauding you from the chat. And I do think it would be really remiss of us to not allow for a couple of questions as follow-up to that really excellent presentation and framing of what we're here to do, and also just the perspective that you shared. So just a couple of questions for Sean, maybe if anything wasn't quite clear, recognizing that there's a lot of information, but just to clarify some things, and then we'd love to just move on to the meat of our conversation today with all of you. So anybody, just put a hand up in the, I can now see that. Morris, if you have the first question, and again, clarification rather than opinion at this point. Thanks. Okay. And Amelia, I see you next. Morris, then Amelia. You need to unmute Morris if you can. We can't hear you. I can't hear you. We still can't hear you, Morris. I don't seem to be. Oh yeah, I can. Oh, there you go. Okay. Try it now.
Yeah, so can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to emphasize what Sean said, that we're here to learn from each other. And if we come here with positions that we want to have accepted by everybody, we are going to get back to 30 years of not listening to each other, and and of an irresolvable conflict. If we listen to each other, we may be able to reach common ground on some of these issues. And so I hope we're able to do that.
Okay, thanks, Morris. Amelia.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Sean, for the presentation, and Morris for your encouragement of us to listen to each other. That's very important. I'm a retired engineer, and when I looked at the specification for the trails, it sure looked to me as if the intent was to accommodate all users. And the worst case scenario from an engineering jargon standpoint is bicycle use. And I'm wondering if Sean could clarify, is this not the case that they were designed primarily for bicycles?
Thanks, Amelia. I'm not sure which trails you're referring to. Can you clarify for me so I can clarify for you?
There is specification in the state Parks Trails Handbook, which apparently informed what we received as the 2019 Trails packet that was provided to the Regional Parks Board of Directors with a cover memo from General Manager Bob Doyle. And there was some information in that about the nature of these sustainable trails and their engineering design, which will be built in some of the newly acquired parklands. It looked to me like it was a design for a bicycle trail that was intended to slow down the bicycles and have bulb outs and have minimal erosion impact like that. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, the short answer is that there are trail design elements that go into a sustainable trail design for no matter what, that hold true for all trail that's built and hold true for all uses that can happen on it. There are certain features of trails that once put into a trail restrict other uses. For instance, steps. Once you put steps on a trail because you have too steep of an area, that basically ceases to be a horse or a biking trail. It is now a hiking trail. The clearance that you put in for horses, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of design elements that go into really what we're trying to do is manage water and how it drains over it. You can see from the pictures I provided you that those two examples are two of many, that if the trail's too steep, it carries water and becomes a river and not a trail. And then people try to go somewhere else and things get messy. So there's a lot of design elements that go into that. Our stance, I want to clarify, is not to build all trails for all people or have every trail accommodate all people. But given the fact that we've only built 13 miles of new trail in the last 25 years, it kind of is a moot point in a way, because we're not developing new trails. We're getting fought every step of the way to doing that. But also, if we're only going to be able to build, less than a mile a year, then we can't in good conscience just build something for one group. We're trying to, like I said, manage the demand. And so what we do is we start out when we design a trail so that we're not precluding users any use until we get to a point to where, oops, we've got to put in steps, or gee, it's just too steep and there's too many cultural resources around here, whatever it is, natural resources. And we've got to do something now that removes, say, equestrians or bicyclists from that trail. And so our goal is not to just build bicycle trails all over the district and open all the trails up that are narrow to bicycles. We understand that that's not possible. This is what we do for a living. So we know that that's not going to work. But when we do design a trail, again, like I said, we're trying to do something for everyone, given the fact that we can hardly do anything at all. Does that make sense?
Okay, Kathy, I see that. I see that you have your hand up, but I'm worried about our time. So I'm wondering if Kathy, if you can just share that in the chat, and we'll try to get that question answered for you directly. Right now, what we wanted to do was pivot into our hiker's perspective conversation, and to lead us off, I'm going to turn it back to Devin. He's going to take it from here, and then we're going to go into our breakout groups and have more detailed conversations. So Devin. There you are.
All right. Thanks, Lou. Actually, you know, we did have one more presentation from Park District staff. I realized we were giving you a lot of information, but the Park District did just produce a very comprehensive study of trail use, and it's scientifically sound. And we have Lisa Baldinger ready to give a 5-minute presentation. If you would beg our indulgence, we can let you understand what exactly we've learned through our community surveys. And then we will start with our hiker perspectives. So I'm going to turn over to Lisa now for a 5-minute presentation.
Good morning. It might even be less than 5 minutes. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and put my PowerPoint in the chat box, which I was planning to do anyway. That way you all have a copy, and I won't go through it today, but I'm happy to come back to future meetings and have a discussion or speak offline, and Devin and Brian can help with that. So my name is Lisa Baldinger, and I'm a legislative and policy management analyst in the general manager's office here at the Park District. And with my colleague, Eric Feeler, who I believe just joined the meeting, we oversee the survey efforts at the district. So surveying at the district began in 1976. So it's been a long time that we've been surveying. And what's important there is it's that longitudinal data. So one survey tells you one snapshot in time, but comparing it to multiple years really gives you the flow of how things are going about. And so over the past 2 years, in the interest of including all of the voices in our community, we've really been doing a deep dive to amend our survey methodology to receive demographics in who was surveyed that align with our census population. And so that was the goal of the 2-year project that's outlined in the presentation that I placed in the chat. What's complementary to the discussion here, there are slides on park and trail usage. In the slide, you'll only see the top results. So I wanted to comment that we did also survey on bird and nature watching, horse riding, environmental education, but we only put the top results, which really do include hiking, walking, dog walking, and biking, as well as picnicking and social events. So you'll see that in the slideshow. We also ask about transportation to parks, where we see high results for our regional trails, biking, and walking as a means of access to our parks, which is always wonderful to see and a great compliment to the work that our agency has been doing over the years. And then another slide that I wanted to highlight for you all, having been able to join your meeting a little bit early today, is we have a slide on barriers. And within the barriers, it identifies safety and not wanting to go alone as a barrier for park usage to our community. And so in future surveys, we plan to dive more into what those barriers look like in order to get more information to ensure that we're creating accessible and inclusive park areas, providing a sense of belonging to our community. So that's just a high summary, and please feel free to dive into the survey, and I'm happy to answer emails. Devin and Brian can connect you all with myself and my colleague Eric if you have any follow-up questions. So thank you very much for having me here today.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Devin, back to you. There you go.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa. So at this point, we wanted to hear from you. It took us an hour and a half to get here, but we want to hear from specifically the groups that are representing hikers and hikers organizations. So to me, that's Jonathan from Outdoor Afro. That's Ian with the Orinda Hiking Club. And that's Elena and Morris as our sort of hiking community at large folks. So if you would each share some of your perspectives, maybe take 5 minutes or so each, that would be really valuable at this time.
I think we need a little less than 5, if we could. Maybe
Okay.
3.
Maybe 3 minutes. I'll let whoever wants to start.
Okay, well, thank you for allowing me to speak. We hike quite often in the East Bay Regional Park District parks, and we hike on a lot of narrow trails. And we prefer not to hike where there are cyclists. Now, there are some park districts like Joaquin Miller in Oakland and Mid-Peninsula open space where we try to avoid hiking there just because there are cyclists allowed on these narrow trails, and we're just fearful of having accidents. I remember leading a hike out on Mount Tam once when cyclists were coming down a trail and they had to divert into the bush, into the scrub to avoid us, and they came at high speed. And to my mind, or to our mind, of the hiking sub policy is we prefer not to have bikes on narrow trails. Certainly on fire roads, that's quite all right. I think all the parks should be open to everybody. I mean, they're public facilities, they should be open to everybody. However, as Devin said, as Sean said, I think that you can't design trails, narrow trails for bikes and hikers. Equestrians are quite fine with us. I mean, we hike on trails with equestrians quite often, and we just step to one side when the horses go by. So that's quite okay with us and with other walkers and dog walkers, of course. It's just the cyclists that give us concern. And I was just going to ask a question of Sean or of Brian. If there are rules and regulations applying to the existing trails in the existing parks, can't those same guidelines and rules and regulations be applied to future park trails? Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
In the interest of time, I'm just going to answer that question really quick. They could be, but there's a question of environmental stewardship and resource protection. And so, as Sean describes sustainable trails, we certainly could apply the existing rules in those existing areas, but the concern is that wouldn't be good stewardship for the land. And so we're trying to find what a sustainable trail network is that protects our resources.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So.
All right. Thank you for that, Ian. Jonathan, Joseph, are you interested in giving your perspective now?
Thank you for the opportunity. And good morning, everyone. Still morning on Friday the 13th. So at Outdoor Afro, we are having, I would say, a pretty good year with getting people outside. Obviously, with COVID, we reduced our hiking groups from 20 to 30 to about 10 to 12 with social distancing and mask wearing. And in the East Bay in particular, we haven't, it's more of a good news story for us. I mean, the Redwood Regional Park or Sam Joaquin Miller, we haven't had too many challenges with cyclists or having dogs off leash or anything like that. Our biggest complaint has been the facilities don't work sometimes, the bathroom facilities, and weren't kept up before COVID, and now with COVID, there's only 1 or 2 open, and that's creating more of a challenge. But I'm very optimistic with what I'm hearing today. I thought Sean's talk was fabulous, and I'm looking forward to working with this group so that we could make as many people as we can happy.
Excellent, Joseph. Excellent. Thank you so much. Elena, do you have any thoughts as a longtime hiker and participant on the trails?
Who are you asking?
Devin, I'm not hearing anything. So if you could try to facilitate, please.
Okay. Elena, maybe we'll get back with you again. Morris, how about your perspective? You're also a many-year participant on the trails.
Okay, well, I'm glad to be able to talk about this today. As the chair of the East Bay Area Trails Council, an earlier coalition of various trail users groups last decade, it often seemed that the majority of trail users, the hikers, were the least represented. So I'm glad we have a voice here. Over the last 15 years, I've hiked with a large variety of hiking groups and hiked alone a lot as well. The hikers I have spoken and corresponded with both over the years and recently are pretty unanimous in noting that East Bay Regional Park District offers exceptional recreational opportunities to East Bay hikers with great scenery visible from well-maintained trails for hikers at a variety of levels of ambition and confidence. Hikers love the trails, the roads, all of them, but do have concerns. Some of these concerns. On maps and signage. Although the maps and signs are accurate and useful, several people have suggested improvements. Showing connecting trails in nearby communities and bordering parks would be a huge plus in many cases. I often run into people who want to know how to get back to the trailhead. Unlike the state park, East Bay Regional trail signage usually does not indicate where a trail goes to, nor do they indicate distances. A bit more information, especially on new trails and new parks, would be welcomed by many hikers and other trail users also. The veteran hikers suggested a web page maintained in real time, especially this year, showing the location of open and closed water fountains and bathrooms that hikers can look at in real time. On trail width, how about another classification of trail widths? Now 8 feet wide is a road and below 8 feet is a narrow trail, but 7 feet wide is not really a narrow trail and requires different regulations perhaps than a trail that is 1 or 2 feet wide. Can we treat them differently? Trail maintenance. East Bay Regional Park District has better funding than most other Bay Area park agencies, and it shows in the quality of trail maintenance. I've noticed maybe that the maintenance seems to be best in the parks with the greatest usage. Generally, the trails in Tilden, Redwood, and Chabot are in great shape and better than some of the trails in, say, Miller Knox, Las Trampas, and Wildcat. I don't know enough to say that the parks adjacent to minority populations are neglected, but the question should be looked at. Sometimes, however, trail maintenance issues remain unresolved until specific funding can be allocated. The 2017 slide on the Ridge Trail in Sibley and the Tilden Creek washout on Wildcat Gorge Trail waited for a couple of years for FEMA funding before they were repaired. And the washout on the Selby Trail in Tilden with a steep, slippery workaround has been waiting for maybe 5 years for settlement with the city of Berkeley. This should not happen. Looking forward, as more parks are open, there is the opportunity, which district trail builders are well aware of, to build trails that require less ongoing maintenance than the inherited ranch roads that pre-exist the sale of future parklands to EB's Regional Park District, thus avoiding many of the ongoing maintenance issues on current trails. Sharing trails. My experience is that over the years, we're getting better at sharing trails. The younger mountain bikers have had the benefit of the high school mountain biking clubs and teams and have been taught trail rules and courtesies. So I think user conflict is gradually lessening. Last week, hiking on the Fence Trail, a social trail with exceptional views along the eastern boundary of Tilden, I neared a peak and heard a voice calling out, "Bike's coming!" And as I jumped off the trail, 2 young bikers peaked the hill and started downwards toward me, one of them saying, "Holy crap, shouting worked." I was very glad someone had taught him to do that. Thinking back, in years of sharing trails with mountain bikers over the years, I personally have had only 4 very negative encounters with mountain bikers. None of these were in EBRPD. All involved angry older guys, not youngsters, and each of them was on a fire road, not a single track. I think because it's much easier to get going too fast on a fire road. In these instances, fortunately, no one was injured, though it could have been otherwise. The number of the hikers I sought feedback from, however, disagree with that assessment and are very concerned about enforcement of speed limit for bikes and also about bikes on trails closed to bikes. The example cited by several, however, was Joaquin Miller Park, which some hikers and some equestrians have abandoned for that very reason. But that's not EBRPD, which has much more restrictions. Loose dogs on trail are another issue and mentioned more than once by other hikers, although as a hiker, I've never felt threatened. As an equestrian, I've had to chase off dogs that wanted to attack my horse. One more note on trail maintenance for bikes. I organized 2 weekends in Joaquin Miller Park, which included reroutes and added switchbacks to steep trails, utilizing bank turns to help bikes stay on the trails and switchbacks to make the trails safer. Up near Truckee last week, I hiked a trail with thousands, literally thousands of large concrete blocks used to provide bank turns and to armor some other sections. This approach contrasts with Bill's Trail in Samuel P. Taylor Park, a good site visit, which after years of litigation by conservation and equestrians seeking to keep bikes off the trail, reopened this summer after years of trail works, and now looks like a model of how to make a single track trail with some steepness and lots of switchbacks safe for all users to share. In 4 miles, I counted over 50 pinch points that narrow the trail and perhaps 20 turns surfaced with very uneven rock work, both installed with the aim of slowing mountain bikers. The result, which I think skeptics should take a look at, apparently is already a mountain biker favorite, and yet the hikers and equestrians I've spoken to also feel safe on it. I could go on and on about any of these items, so feel free to listen to chat.
Yeah, Morris, I think you've given us quite a bit to chew on, and obviously you're a font of direct information. So we'll look forward to hearing more from you and in the conversations coming up. But thank you for framing some of those issues. Devin, is there anybody else that you wanted to call on?
Yeah, just one more person, and that's Jim Hansen. I think he had his hand up. Jim?
Hey, great. Thanks, Devin and everybody. So I just wanted to note, thank you all who spoke. Just wanted to note that I think several of us would describe ourselves as largely in the hiking interest and position. And so that includes the California Native Plant Society, which has more or less about 1,000 members, the Golden Gate Audubon. Sierra Club has an activities group that has a lot of hiking. And so I wasn't sure how this segment was going to be done, but I did want to make that note. I would assume also the Ridge Trail Association, I know has multiple interests, but a big part of it is hiking. So just wanted to make that note. I realize there's not time allowed to represent other hiking kind of perspectives here, perhaps, but I want to make that note. Sean, I did want to thank you for the presentation. I hope you will be putting a water bar at that trail at Miller Knox. I did want to clarify, because I think this is kind of in the room here. It sounded like you said that with this huge, and this is why this is so important, with this huge amount of inventory of land that you're looking at, including the ones that are currently in LUPAs and stuff, what I heard you say was we would be putting narrow trails for all unless we had to put stairs, and then that would knock out the equestrians and the bikers. So is this kind of again, it gets back to, is this the position which is new, frankly, the district is taking? So I just want to clarify that point.
Well, I'll respond to that very quickly because I know we're short on time. It's not a new position, and that's not entirely accurate. We're here as a group right now for you to tell us,
do you want multi-use trails everywhere? Is that what what this group wants? Is that something we think is a good idea? You tell us if you think that's a good idea or not. Or do you want to separate all uses? You tell us if that's a good idea. But we're open to discussing this, Jim. And like I said, we build so few trails that we try to accommodate everyone as we can. It's sort of a, I hate to say it, but throwing our hands up in the air saying, well, if this group gets mad when we take something away and this group gets mad because they're not represented, and we're hearing from all of them, not just one, then we're going to try to accommodate everyone because that's the safest, most benefit to the greater good. And that's what I'm saying. But please do not confuse that with we're going to build all trails for all people and that's all we're going to do, because that's not what I said and that's not what I'm saying now.
I see Linus with his hand up. And I see Norman with his hand up as well.
Yeah, I know. We have a couple of hands up, but I folks, I'm sure what you have to say is important, but
it is important. I'd like to say it. May I say it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, and this is just by way, and it's a pragmatic comment. It has to do with mapping and the notion that there's very few trails that are able to be built. But updating mapping, making sure that it's really reflective. Fernandez Ranch is 3 miles of new trail. It's multi-use. It's been open to the public for many years. It's a 1,185 acre property that really sees hosts significant public use from a wide range of visitors on a daily basis. I can't say that it's a paradigm of balance as to trail use, but it has been a very successful model. Very, very only occasional conflicts because of the way it was positioned with respect to the master plan. It's listed as Rancho Pinole on the Park District's map. Completely understand that. But in fact, it is owned by John Muir Land Trust. It's 1,185 acres. It's lots of new trail that was recently built. And it would be, this is meant as a supportive gesture to Sean, who is long suffering with these issues, that, you know, we've tried to be helpful in this way. And there is new trail, it is multi-use, and you know, how we can partner and collaborate in showing people that it's there maybe takes a little bit of the pressure off as well. But he's exactly right about permitting and all of the CEQA issues and so forth to build new trail, and all of the issues that we try and resolve once they're there. But again, I know it looks like manifest destiny. The Park District is going to own all properties, all places based on the master plan. I get that. But with that said, 1,185 acres is available to you. And we might want to adjust that map because it is not land banked. It's been open since 2000, I don't know, 2008, 2007. It's been open for a long time.
All right,
I'm gonna get some feedback on that, I'm sure, but I think it'll be
it's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
All right, Norman, a couple of quick comments, and we're going to break into our breakout rooms. Go ahead.
Well, I'm very perplexed because you want to get a hiking perspective, but as the representative of the Sierra Club, I was not even consulted about this before today. I mean, the Sierra Club began as a hiking organization. The Sierra Club has hundreds of thousands of members who hike trails. And in the Bay chapter, we have whole activity sections that deal with trails and hiking and uses of all kinds of different groups. And I would have thought that there seems to be some kind of assumption that somehow the Sierra Club isn't involved with uses, hiking, bicycles, and user groups. And so I'm not sure why and how somehow we're pigeonholed as being something other
Norman, I'm going to interrupt you. Let me finish. No, if I could, because it was your insistence that we include hiking groups and suggesting that there wasn't representation from hiking groups that we specifically then brought on Ian and some of those other groups. So that's why we felt it was important to have those groups represented, was partly from your insistence that we bring on hiking groups. There will be opportunities for whether it's resource opportunities. Obviously, we'd love Sierra Club's perspective on hiking, on biking, and I think we've received the white paper, and we've received that a lot. So any insinuation that we somehow are trying not to hear from the Sierra Club, I do have to push back a little bit.
Well, I asked to have it expanded, not simply for hiking groups, but also bicyclists, equestrian groups, off-leash dog and dog owner groups. My pitch had been that it had to be as expansive as possible. And I can give you a quick perspective that from the Sierra Club's perspective, what people want in terms of hiking is they want an enjoyment of the solitude and the ability to experience nature without being concerned about their safety, and also without being concerned about whether or not somebody, whether it's on a bike or something, some other type of transportation mode or whatever, is disturbing that in a park. And that's one of the critical features of what I hear from people who do in the hiking sections and activity sections is very important. And the other perspective I can give as the Sierra Club representative is that our Marin group, we're Alameda, Contra Costa, Marin, and San Francisco counties. The Marin group, there's the constant refrain is, I'm sorry to say to the bicycle community, that the bicycle community does not respect the hikers, that there's huge user conflicts. I'll leave it at that. So that's the hiking perspective from the Sierra Club on the fly without prior notice.
Okay, thank you, Norm. And just as a reminder that as we go forward with these presentations and hearing from perspectives to launch our breakout sessions, the intent is really just to hear from a couple of folks, just as I said, to kind of frame or seed the discussion. So more to be revealed and discussed in our breakout sessions. Let's see how this works for everybody. I'm going to share my screen real quickly. Actually, I don't think I need to do that. Time check, we're at 12 o'clock. Our intention was to come back together at 12:30 for a presentation on the working group survey results, which you all, hopefully most of you had participated in, and we think it's important to feed back those results to you. But I'm concerned that we have enough time for a good conversation in the breakout room. So I'm going to ask district staff if we can maybe find another way to present or compress that presentation on the working group survey so that we can allow for about. Sorry?
Yeah, I think the decision was made that we'll circulate those results separately outside of this meeting.
Yeah, thanks. That's good. So what's going to happen now, we're going to break into 6 breakout rooms, which means there'll be about 4 to 5 people in each breakout room. We are asking that one of you serve as the meeting scribe to take the notes on the conversation. We just simply don't have enough folks to offer that for you. So, and to self-facilitate, but we are gonna have staff available in each of the sessions just as a resource, or if you need some support there. The 3 questions that we're asking each of you, your breakout groups, to address, and I'll just throw this in the chat as well, so you have it. The first one is, what are some of the goals that hikers have in using trails? So again, aspirations or goals. What are some of the issues that hikers have that experience or perhaps even create on the trails? And thirdly, what do you think would improve trail user experience? So that's our framing, and we're going to take, 30 minutes, I think, is what we'd like to do for this. And because what we'd like to do after we bring you all back is hear back from each group. So each group should have somebody taking notes and somebody who can report back to the large group. And those report backs are, we just need those to be about 3 minutes each, since we have 6. And I think that will allow us to get us done by 1 o'clock. So these are randomized groups. In just a moment, you're going to see an invitation to join a breakout room, and you're just going to click yes, join. And Mary's asking for a health break. And yes, so this is sort of that time for grabbing a snack or a comfort break. But please come to we'll give you like a 2-minute warning into your breakout rooms, and then you will be unceremoniously grabbed back into the main room at about, I'm gonna say about 12:40. Okay, so I think Amanda, you're in charge of getting the breakout rooms going.